Haarlem, Netherlands. 1943. A wooden park bench beneath winter trees. A woman sits alone. A teenage girl walks toward her. She wears braided pigtails, a simple coat. She looks no older than 12. Small, quiet, completely unthreatening. She stops in front of the bench and asks a harmless question. "What's your name?" The woman answers. The girl reaches into her coat, pulls out a pistol, looks the woman straight in the eyes, and fires. One shot. The woman falls dead onto the bench. The girl calmly puts the weapon away, mounts her bicycle, and rides off through the park. Her name is Freddy Oversteegen. She is 16 years old. The woman she killed was not German. She was Dutch, a collaborator, someone who worked willingly with the Nazis. She had compiled a list containing every Jewish person in the region, names, addresses, entire families. She was preparing to hand that list to the Germans. That list would have meant deportation, and deportation meant death. By killing one woman, Freddy saved hundreds of innocent people. By the end of the war, Freddy and her sister would assassinate dozens of Nazi officers and collaborators. The exact number was never recorded. No one ever knew for certain. When Freddy was asked how many people she killed, she always gave the same reply. One should never ask a soldier such things. This is the story of two teenage girls who seduced Nazi officers, led them into forests and executed them. Girls who learned how to kill in an underground potato cellar. Girls who refused to murder children of and the children of their enemies. Girls who managed to stay human while fighting monsters. Freddy Oversteegen was born in 1925 in a small village just outside Haarlem. Her childhood was anything but ordinary. Her family lived on a houseboat. Money was always short. Her father struggled to earn enough to keep them afloat. Her mother Truus was a committed communist who believed deeply in one thing. When you see injustice, you do not look away, you act. When Freddy was still young, her parents separated. Her father stood on the bow of the boat as they left, singing a French farewell song. She would rarely see him again. Truus moved Freddy and her older sister Truus into a tiny apartment in Haarlem. They slept on mattresses stuffed with straw. They owned almost nothing, but there was always space for others. Jewish refugees fleeing Germany. Political fugitives escaping Nazi arrest. People who needed somewhere where to hide. Freddy and Truus often shared their beds with strangers whose names they sometimes never learned. They helped make dolls for children suffering in the Spanish Civil War. They learned early that comfort was optional, but responsibility was not. Their mother taught them a single lesson that shaped everything that followed. If you have to help someone, she said, you must be willing to sacrifice yourself. On May 10, 1940, Nazi Germany invaded the Netherlands. The Dutch army resisted for 5 days. Then the country surrendered. Freddy was 14 years old, Truus was 16. The occupation began immediately. German soldiers filled the streets. Nazi flags appeared on buildings. New rules were announced daily. Fear became part of everyday life. Freddy later remembered the sound most clearly. German soldiers banging on doors with the butts of their rifles. The noise echoing through entire neighborhoods. The shouting, the screaming, people dragged from their homes. It was terrifying, but the Oversteegen family did not hide. They resisted. The Oversteegen family did not wait for permission to fight back. Freddy and Truus joined their mother distributing illegal newspapers and anti-Nazi pamphlets. At night, they moved quietly through the streets with glue and paper, pasting their messages over German propaganda posters. The Netherlands must be free. Do not go to Germany. For every Dutch man sent to work there, a German soldier goes to the front. When they were finished, they fled on their bicycles, hearts pounding, knowing that if they were caught, they would be shot. They were never caught. Their actions did not go unnoticed. In 1941, a man named Frans van der Wiel came to their door. He was a leader of the Haarlem Resistance Network, part of the underground fighting the Nazi occupation. He had heard about the family hiding refugees, and about the daughters risking their lives in the streets. He asked their mother a direct question. May your daughters join the resistance? Freddy was 14, Truus was 16. Their mother said yes, the girls said yes, but van der Wiel was not convinced yet. He needed to know if they could be trusted, if they would break under pressure. A few days later, he returned to their apartment wearing a Gestapo uniform. He burst through the door waving a gun, shouting in German, demanding to know where a Jewish man was hiding. The girls did not panic. They did not give up a single name. Instead, they fought back, kicking, hitting, screaming, refusing to betray anyone, even if it meant their own deaths. Then the man stopped. He revealed who he really was. They had passed the test. Van der Wiel explained what joining the resistance truly meant. They would learn to sabotage bridges and railway lines. Then he paused, and they would learn to shoot Nazis. Truus looked at her younger sister. Freddy smiled and said, well, that's something I've never done before they left. Their mother gave them one final instruction. Always stay human. The Oversteegen sisters were taken to an underground potato shed. Beneath the earth, hidden from the streets above, they were trained to use weapons. They learned how to hold a gun, how to breathe, how to aim, how to stay calm, how to pull the trigger. They learned how to kill. Their first missions were not assassinations. They were arson attacks. Nazi warehouses needed to be destroyed, but they were guarded by SS soldiers. The plan was simple. Freddy and Truus would approach the guards, talk to them, flirt with them, laugh with them, keep their attention focused forward while resistance fighters slipped in behind and set the fires. It worked. The warehouses burned. The guards never suspected the two teenage girls who had been joking with them moments earlier. Vanderwill understood something crucial. These girls could go places men could not. They could get close to targets no one else could reach. Their youth was a weapon. Their innocence was camouflage. Soon that camouflage would be used for killing. Freddy's first assassination was not a German soldier. It was a Dutch woman. The resistance had identified a collaborator, someone working closely with the Nazis. She had compiled a list containing names and addresses of every Jewish person in the region. She was preparing to hand it over. That list was a death sentence. The assignment was given to Freddy. She rode her bicycle to a public park. The woman was sitting alone on a bench. Freddy approached her calmly. Just a girl with braided hair. Harmless, ordinary. She asked a simple question. "What's your name?" The woman answered. Freddy confirmed the target. She drew her pistol, looked the woman directly in the eyes, and fired. The woman fell. Freddy got back on her bicycle and rode away. Later, Freddy described what it felt like. "The first thing you want to do after shooting someone," she said, "is to help them, to pick them up." That instinct never left her, no matter how many times she pulled the trigger. Freddy and Truus began developing their own methods. The forest, they would visit taverns where German officers drank. One sister would approach alone. She would flirt, laugh, touch his arm, lean in close. Then she would ask the question, "Would you like to go for a walk?" The officer always said yes. They would walk deeper into the woods, away from roads, away from witnesses. And there, hidden among the trees, the other sister would be waiting. One shot, a pre-dug grave, two bicycles disappearing into the distance. Other times, speed was the weapon. Truus pedaled the bicycle while Freddy sat on the back, gun ready. They identified a target walking down the street. Freddy fired as they passed. They never stopped. They always used bicycles. Walking was too dangerous, Truus explained later. "I always made sure the coast was clear." Sometimes, they went to the doorstep. They followed a target home, learned his routine, then knocked on his door. When he opened it, he saw a young girl. By the time he understood the danger, it was already over. In 1943, a third fighter joined their resistance cell. Her name was Hannie Schaft. She came from a different world, middle class, educated. Her father was a school teacher. Hannie was studying law at the University of Amsterdam and planned to become a human rights lawyer. Hannie refused. She was expelled. She did not return home. She joined the resistance. Hannie stood out. Bright red hair, pale skin, green eyes, the kind of face people remembered. It would make her dangerous and eventually doomed. She was tested the same way as the Oversteegen sisters, given a gun, sent to assassinate a Nazi officer. She raised the weapon, her hands shook. She pulled the trigger. Click, the gun was empty. The officer revealed himself as a resistance commander. She had passed. Together, Freddy, Truus, and Hannie became one of the most effective resistance units in the Netherlands. They sabotaged railways to stop deportation trains. They smuggled Jewish children out of the country. They forged documents. They gathered intelligence for the Allies. Some collaborators were more dangerous than German soldiers. Dutch citizens who betrayed neighbors, who handed over Jews, who worked for the Gestapo. Truus called them a disease in society. "You had to cut them out," she said. "There was no other way. One order came, they refused. Kidnapping children to use as leverage. We are not Hitlerites," Freddy said. "Resistance fighters do not murder children." That line would never be crossed. In 1944, Hannie became one of the most wanted people in the country. Find the girl with the red hair. She dyed it black. Wore glasses, changed her appearance. She kept fighting. They found everything. Tortured, interrogated, isolated. Her hair dye faded. Red roots appeared. She confessed to her actions. She never gave a single name. Her last words to her executioner were calm. "I shoot better than you." After the war, Hannie received a state funeral. Freddy and Truus received nothing. They were communists during the Cold War. They were ignored, forgotten, treated with suspicion. Decades passed. Truus became an artist, a sculptor. She created memorials to the resistance and spoke publicly about what they had done. Freddy chose silence. She married, had children, tried to live normally. She never slept well. Every year on Remembrance Day, she woke with dread. When asked how many people she killed, she always answered the same way. One should not ask a soldier that. In 2014, nearly 70 years later, the Dutch government finally honored them. Freddy was 89 years old. Her son said it was the happiest day of her life. Truus died in 2016. Freddy died in 2018, one day before her 93rd birthday. Freddy visited Hannie's grave until the end, leaving red roses. When asked what lesson mattered most, they repeated their mother's words. Always stay human. They killed, they cried afterward, they carried the weight forever. That is the difference. During the occupation, 90% of the Dutch population tried to live normally. 5% resisted. Of those, very few were women. Few were still killed with their own hands. Freddy Oversteegen was one of them, a teenage girl with braided pigtails, a pistol hidden in a bicycle basket. No music, no glory, no apology, just a decision that some things are worth killing for, and some things are worth dying for.